Hello, I'm Jane Swift. I'm the former governor of Massachusetts, and I'm thrilled to be here for the Reagan Institute Summit on Education. They are in their 6th year. I'm particularly flattered that I was asked to do this one-on-one interview with Governor Kim Reynolds and to talk about her exceptional leadership in advocating for excellence in education for all of the children and students in the great state of Iowa. So Governor Reynolds, thank you for joining me virtually for this terrific event here today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and certainly appreciate the Reagan Institute for all they do and for providing this opportunity to talk about a really important issue, and that's educating our young people.
Great. So let's get right into it. We only have a short period of time, and you've done so much great work that we're going to need every minute that they're allotting to us. So you've been working towards passing the Students First Act for several years, and congratulations, you just signed it into law in January. Why has this been such a priority for you? And just give us a sense of how it came to be.
Yeah, well, I am just really proud that I was able to sign that historic bill into law. It is honestly one of the proudest moments that I've had as an elected official. And it's one of the boldest school choice programs in the country. And it truly is a result of years of educational policy work that we put in place. As Lieutenant Governor, I was passionate about STEM education. So I spent a lot of time really getting that in school districts all across the state. While we were working to get universal school choice across the finish line, in the couple of years that we didn't get it done, we were still able to make progress. We expanded open enrollment for public schools, again, giving parents choice that they didn't have prior to that. We made it easier to launch a charter school. So that was something that we had been working on for a long time. Proud of the movement that we made in that. We increased the tax deductions for our scholarship program. We call it our student tuition organization program. But I think so education has always been a focus of mine, and really kind of revamping an outdated system. And that's what I loved about STEM, what that brought to the classroom, the hands-on and just the technology, the working together. But I think COVID honestly put a fine point on the need to really change the structure of education in Iowa and across this country. And so, when kids were locked out of school, sometimes for 2 years, we got our kids back in the classroom. We were one of the first states to do that, but we still had schools that kept them out. And the parents that had the resources were able to get their children to a different school to continue to have their kids have that in-classroom experience. And the families that didn't have the funds didn't have that choice. And in Iowa, in one of our largest school districts, that it was about 800 kids that dropped out of the system, that they had no idea where they were at. 92% of those kids qualified for free and reduced lunch. So you can realize, they didn't have the funds for another choice, and 66% were minorities. And so that really, for me, lit a fire to get this done, to make sure that, education is a ticket to the American dream. And I wanted to make sure that every child had an opportunity to pick the environment where they could be the best that they could be. And ultimately, we got it passed. It was the first bill I signed this legislative session. We will get to universal school choice in 3 years. So every K through 12 student in year 3, even those that are currently in private schools right now, will be eligible for the ESA. And I have just always believed that, school choice is not a zero-sum game. It will literally elevate all of education. And we've got some great examples of that already that's happening with signing that bill into law. It was an outdated model. This is the future. And I'm excited about the transformational change and generational change that we'll see by signing this bill into law.
Great. Well, and thanks for the shout out to Lieutenant Governors. We know they do a lot of real work.
Yeah.
And as you know, certainly Iowa is leading the way, but we've seen all across the country, governors putting public dollars in the hands of citizens in proposed legislation or legislation like the Student First Act. You just gave us a great sense of the different threads that happened during COVID that animated and gave power to these movements. As you are actually at implementation, we'll celebrate again. We have to celebrate those wins, right?
Right.
But how are you thinking about how you'll measure the impact now that you've had that success?
Well, so one of the pieces of qualifying or utilizing the ESA funding is that a student will be required to participate in all of the mandated state and federal testing that our public schools have in place. So I want to make sure that we can actually have some data so we can provide that for other states that are looking at why, how the data does prove out that this will elevate all of education. So, there were a little bit of resistance to that in years 1 and 2, but once we put the really bold program that we put together this year and opened it up to students that were already in private schools, that was one of the compromises that they agreed to. And I said, it helps tell your story. It's the right thing to do. So we'll have data to support that. And then another benchmark, I think, will just be our NAEP scores, because again, this isn't just about, it will elevate all of education. And so I think Florida has been able to demonstrate that. They're #1 in education with the rankings that just came out, and they've actually been utilizing school choice, probably one of the states that have been doing it the longest since the early 2000s under Governor Bush. And then of course, Governor Ducey did a great job and really working on school choice in Arizona. So we're going to have some data that we can market and really showcase how this will make a difference in students' scores and results moving forward.
Great. I want to just say Massachusetts is still doing a decent job, but I
You
do
are.
recognize Florida too.
Yeah.
And I agree that their choice program has been exceptional. I will say, I think one of the things actually Florida and other states have done really well is using technology to make these kind of programs easier to deploy and manage. How do you see, I'm old, I've been out of office for 2 decades now. So technology has come such a long way. How does that help to make these kinds of programs more possible? How do you use it for both a management tool, but also to make access possible?
I will give Massachusetts a shout out, because when I was standing up the STEM initiative, you were our benchmark and have been for a long time. So it was one of the states that we pointed to see what you were doing that we could implement. You make it your own, but you look to states that are successful, and then you bring that in-house and you adapt it to meet the needs of your state. So you were definitely somebody that
we had a great female lieutenant governor,
yes,
actually, who just left office, who was doing that work. So I don't want to get us off track and get back to technology, but thank you for that.
Yeah. So one of we're the technology platform that we've contracted with is Odyssey, and that's a startup company, but the few states that are doing school choice, that's one of the platforms that they're using, and we have a very aggressive timeline. So, and right now we're on track. Everything is moving forward, but our launch date is May 31st, and so we're working with Department of Revenue. We're working with Odyssey. One of the reasons we chose them is they have a closed circuit system, and we felt that would go a long way in really mitigating fraud, and to make sure that we were, had a system that was easy for parents and the vendors, which would be the private schools, and then some of the other business partners that would be eligible for some of the ESA funding. So everything is on track. We've done a ton of outreach with not only our schools, and we're training them right now on the system. We'll be working with parents next. We've done a lot of communication and coordination, but I think, the platform that we're working with really, I think, will not only make sure that it'll mitigate fraud and abuse, it'll be a great system to track. It'll be an easy system for parents to utilize. We're going to do allocations twice a year, so they were able to make that happen as well. But right now we're on track, and it's I think it will really be a seamless transition to move into funding and the ESA program, Students First program.
Well, I can't wait to see your progress on that, and certainly technology can make all of our lives easier, but it also, and I'm glad you brought up parent stakeholders. We know another important stakeholder group who's certainly being impacted by the almost mind-bending rapid advance of technology, our employer community. And as you know, one of the really critically important roles of a governor is, as you're speaking with employers, you need to figure out how to prepare the workforce of the future. And whether it's Iowa or another state, it's important to be able to take steps so that our students, our children, are prepared for the jobs. And let's be honest, right? Some of these jobs don't even exist yet. Things are changing so quickly. You have been one of our nation's most vocal voices about computer science education. Thank you for that. So how does that, the workforce, how does all of that fit into your education agenda?
Yeah, well, it's just kind of been systemic and systematic. We've done a lot with it. Started with, like I said, STEM education. From that, we stood up computer science as elementary. We passed a bill to make sure that high schools, elementary and middle schools all were offering high quality computer science programs. You know, they teach critical thinking, teamwork, they're just written and verbal communication. That's what, again, what I love about STEM is the hands-on. That's how I learn best. And you really see the engagement from students when you give them the opportunity to get in there and start working with programs. So we're kind of laying the foundation with computer science. With the computer sciences elementary, we took 12 high poverty needs school districts and really infused this with them in the system so that the kids could have the foundation to be successful moving forward, and then be a resource for other school districts to implement that in their schools as well. And we've seen great results from those programs. And from there, we've moved into work-based learning and registered apprenticeship programs. I am a huge proponent of both of them. My goal, not only to get STEM and computer science in every school district, but to make sure that every school, starting in middle school, has the opportunity for those students to participate in a work-based learning program, certification, or registered apprenticeship program. And it really brings education, a community college, and a business together. It helps meet the needs of the areas because it varies in different areas of the state. And again, really, it starts to develop that pipeline of talent that our industry needs. And just it's been really a win-win for our businesses, as well as our schools and our kids, because they find out what they have a passion for, and it really helps them, drive and kind of decide where their interests are moving forward.
Your students' first act, right? If there's a school that isn't meeting those work-based needs, or they're not responding to the need to prepare the workforce of the future, parents and students have choices.
They do.
And that will elevate, as you said, I love that. I forget the exact phrase you use, but elevate
all of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
I'll give you a quick example. So I referenced
Please.
one of our larger school districts in the state of Iowa, and during COVID, we were one of the first states to get the kids back in the classroom. Parents decided if they wanted to continue online, they had that choice. But if a parent wanted their child to be in a classroom, we felt that they should be able to have that opportunity as well. And so that we were sued to keep the kids out of the classroom. And then we stood up the Students First Act. And that large school district that we kind of struggled with throughout COVID and through some of the changes that we've implemented are now up on TV, actually talking about, they realize that parents now have a choice in where they send their kids to school, and that they want to be that choice. And so they know that they have to make changes in their programs and how they're educating their students. And for have that happen within, 6 months from passing, not even 6 months, that quickly, to have school districts, public schools recognize the importance of meeting the needs of parents is just a game changer from where we've been.
Thank you for sharing that story. So you said you learn by doing. I learn by stories. So I think sometimes those little stories really do help us to understand better the change that you're bringing forth. And I also appreciate you being kind to your moderator because you brought it back to the pandemic. And I want to talk about another area that has been profoundly disrupted and impacted by the pandemic. So I'm about to start. I have twins. It's not a tightly or closely held secret, but I have twins who are graduating from college this month. So I'm about to start my, but I still remember those early years as only mothers of twins can. And one of the things that the pandemic exposed are the longstanding cracks in our childcare system. And one of the unfortunate things that happened is women left the workforce in unprecedented numbers, women who I don't think intended to leave the workforce. And we need all the folks who want to work to be in our system. So, well, many of those women have returned. We haven't seen a total rebound in availability of high quality childcare. So what do we have to do differently? And I was just giving a speech to some federal workers who asked me this question, and I had a very poor answer. So I wish that we had done this before so I could have stolen your answer. But what do we have to do differently to support those working families and our youngest learners?
Yeah, well, workforce was one of our biggest obstacles going into COVID, and COVID only just, set it on steroids. I mean, that is one of the biggest barriers that states face across the country, is finding people to fill the jobs that we have available, not to mention the additional businesses and that we are trying to bring into our state and the expansions that we're trying to drive. But since COVID started, I mean, I stood up an economic recovery advisory board and really targeted how we could come out of COVID stronger and better than where we went into it. And we've spent a lot of the COVID dollars on infrastructure, broadband, housing, childcare was a top priority. And so since COVID, we've spent and allocated over $500 million in state and federal funding to increase access to childcare. We've been able to create through that funding over 25,000 new childcare spots. And while, I'm a small state, 3.2 million residents, citizens, the state of Iowa, it might not sound, it might sound like a lot, but there's still just a huge need that still exists. And so this were pilot programs that we were able to try different things and to see what worked and what didn't. In addition to that, we really, we stood up a child care task force. So as well as the Economic Recovery Advisory Task Force, we've been able to implement almost every single recommendation that was put forth in that task force. So it was helpful to bring all the stakeholders together and really walk through what that need looks like. The other thing that we did is we tried to incentivize businesses to partner with them, to provide them a grant or a tax credit, to have that be part of their business, to open up an on-site daycare, use it as a recruiting tool, or a recruiting tool for workforce, or to work with existing private sector daycares and say, we will be responsible for 50 of your slots. That's revenue that they can count on. So that provides some predictability. And again, it is a recruitment and marketing tool for the business to say, I can offset your costs for childcare. We've got a facility here if you come and work for us. So that's been really effective. And we're looking for ways to continue to build that out. We set up a shared service platform. A lot of these daycares are small business owners just getting started, and they don't have the ability to utilize technology that we talked about earlier. So this allows them to share a platform, to automate their operations, to look for ways that they can share insurance. That was another issue that we addressed. And then again, workforce. So you want to pay your employees more, but then it costs too much for childcare, and there's always the offset of that. So a really unique program that we set up with one of our Council Bluffs school districts is they're adding an early learning center as part of the school. And that will create in one area 200 childcare spots. That'll help with recruitment for teachers and businesses in the surrounding area. They're also standing up 14 all-day preschool classrooms. So now we'll be able to, take them from birth to childcare to preschool. And because of the connection with the high school there, we've got students who are working in early learning, seeing if that's something that they would like to maybe make a profession, have that be their profession. They can earn credits toward that. They get paid while they're doing it. And so that has been a real win-win too. And we've done planning grants for other school districts to stand up something similar to that. But those are quite a few spots, along with preschool is an issue too. And so providing classroom and then training opportunities for high school students is just a win-win all the way around. So those are some of the things that we've been working on to address the childcare shortage.
So I have my answer. The next time somebody asks me to say, well, if you have an opportunity to go live in Iowa, they have lots of great initiatives underway.
We're working on it.
New childcare spots. So I love us multitasking moms, right? So now I have in my back pocket my best answer on the childcare crisis. Awesome. President Reagan, I think we all have President Reagan stories. Even yesterday with your team when we were getting ready, we got some great President Reagan stories, but one of the great things about our president is he talked about the twin goals that were named in A Nation at Risk. And by the way, can you believe that was 40 years ago? My hair was not this color, but what he said about the twin goals in A Nation at Risk was the twin goals of equity and high quality schooling have profound and practical meaning for our economy and society. And we cannot permit, I can't say this like Reagan, I wish I was an order like him. We cannot permit one to yield to the other in principle or in practice. You have talked so much and so passionately and persuasively about Students First as a lever of educational equity and, of course, of excellence and that lifting of all students in Iowa. So how do you define excellence for students in Iowa?
Well, I think that it's making sure we're preparing them to be the best that they can be, so that when every child leaves high school, they're prepared to either enter into post-secondary education, or they have the skills to land a good paying job that helps provide them with a living wage, and most importantly keeps them in Iowa. That's one of my number one objectives. I want to make sure I'm making connections as much as I can. One of the things I stood up my first year as a governor, I think it was in 2018, 2018, I think I signed that into law, was our Future Ready Iowa initiative. And it had a goal of having 70% of Iowans in the workforce have either education or training beyond high school. By 2025, we've met that goal, but really with the mindset of making sure we're doing everything we can to set our kids up to be successful and to live the American dream, right? And that's why I love, again, I keep going back to the work-based learning, registered apprenticeship programs. We lead the country in the number of registered apprenticeship programs. We stood up more new registered apprenticeship programs last year than any other state in the country, with more to come. But it really does give these kids an opportunity to earn while they learn, to get in there and test run different professions and opportunities. And back to Future Ready Iowa, that evolves with whatever the top 10 in-demand jobs are in the state of Iowa. So it's flexible, and we're constantly working on meeting the needs of our employers in the state of Iowa. Because I tell you, whatever governor is first at figuring out this workforce issue, they are the ones where businesses are going to expand and locate and continue to see their economy grow. So it just really is making sure that we're giving these kids every opportunity to be successful and succeed. And we've also invested, it's been a passion of mine too, in mental health, especially with COVID and just a lot of the stresses we put on these kids. We've done a lot with standing up a children's mental health system. They talked about it for 20 years and never did anything. Well, we stood one up and have it in place, and now have a continuum of care just to make sure, again, that our kids are healthy, and happy and have every opportunity to be successful and to be healthy when they're when they're trying to get an education and be the best that they can be. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to do from a mental health perspective as well.
So you are busting all the myths and the stereotypes about politicians, Governor. Imagine that, setting a goal and then achieving it early. So, which I love. I'm early to everything. So that is just fantastic, and a benefit too, right? Not just any goal, but one that gets your students and young adults ready for successful careers in Iowa. And I will tell you, I served as one of the jury co-chairs for the Aspen Prize, naming the best community colleges in America. And Northern Iowa was one of our 10 finalists. So clearly those initiatives are permeating all the way through your systems. So you probably don't need this, but as I've already said, right, like looking to others as models, and actually you did very kindly give credit to what's happened in Florida, Arizona. I pulled out of you a little bit of a nod to Massachusetts, Lieutenant Governor Polito back in the day, but there will be many other state leaders who will be watching this, maybe aspiring state leaders who will be at the event. So I'm certain many of them would love to hear your advice about these twin goals that President Reagan spoke so eloquently about how do they advance both equity and quality at the same time. What words of wisdom would you like to share so others can emulate your success?
Yeah, well, I think really our Students First Choice Act has done that to really, I think, will kind of set the foundation that'll really raise all of education. So, I think my advice to other governors would be, don't give up. First of all, keep working. We talk a lot about maybe the conflict between the unions and school choice and getting that done. And while that is a component of it, what I found that, an area I needed to work on more was actually my rural school districts and my rural legislators. And so what I did is I went on the road and I sat down with rural superintendents all across the state. And I said, look, I know I'm not going to change your mind, but I want to talk to you. I truly believe this will help all of education. Public schools are critical to the foundation of education in our society, and we need you to be successful. And that's where the majority of parents are going to go. But parents also need to have a choice, and it shouldn't be determined by income or zip code. So what can I do to help you be more innovative and to have the opportunity to feel like you can compete on a somewhat level playing field? And I got almost the same response with every superintendent I talked to. And it's chapter 12, but it's really the rules and the regulatory environment that we strap them down with. And then their ability to be competitive when it comes to teacher salaries. And so as part of my final bill that I got across the finish line, we addressed that. We gave them long overdue flexibility in being able to be innovative and competitive. And I figured out a way with existing funding for them to increase teacher salaries. And it went to teachers, so they couldn't use it for administrators. We really wanted to focus on those teachers that are in the classroom. And I think it was about 100 million that we were able to free up and make available. And again, it was already in the formula, in the base, so it didn't require new money to be able to do that. And then I brought the legislators in early. I walked them through what the bill did. I gave them an opportunity to ask questions. I really tried to, drive momentum and excitement about this was the year to get it done. I ran on it extensively, and we won by a significant margin. So that drove momentum and mandate just a little bit as well. But just keep making the case of why it matters. And I think the more states that are able to implement school choice, and we see those scores rise and students doing better, and that it didn't close down our public school systems, we're going to be able to change the narrative moving forward. And I think everyone's going to recognize that there is benefit for everybody. And when I have superintendents telling me now, and Des Moines Public wasn't the first one, we've had several say, I'm going to be the destination of choice. We're like, game on. That's the culture that we're looking for. That's what our kids deserve. And so we're looking forward to getting this implemented and really see the results moving forward.
Well, that is awesome. So let me see if I can do a quick recap. So the Students First Act, lay the groundwork. Lieutenant governors do a lot of hard work, something you've been working on for years, giving all parents public sector dollars and choice, irregardless of where their children sit today. How fantastic, modeling off of best practices you found in other states and then building on it. If you need more daycare slots, or if you want to model for how to expand access to daycare, Iowa has that. If you're an aspiring teacher, an existing teacher, you want to make more money, Governor Kim Reynolds is paying teachers more. So you could go to Iowa for that. What am I forgetting? Equity, work-based learning. They're going to provide those experiential learning opportunities as early. You have the most, right? Work-based learning opportunities and apprenticeships of any state in the country. I may be hired as the new pitch person for the state of Iowa. I don't know.
You're doing good. I love it. We're trying to get the message out there. A great example of a work-based learning program, APEX, APEX in Waukee. Google that. It looks like a corporation, and it's brought entrepreneurs and startups and businesses and kids, and they're starting businesses. They have business cards. It's just incredible. We've been doing this for some time, and other school districts are doing very similar programs, but it's so awesome to see that kind of that's what education should look like. Truly. That's a great example of what education should look like moving forward.
Well, I am smart enough to know when to give a governor the last word. And this has been informative and fun. And I can't wait to get to Iowa and to see firsthand what you are doing. But thank you. And of course, we both want to thank the Reagan Institute for this program in its 6th year so that we can elevate these best practices. Any final word, Governor?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. So thank you. It was great to be with you. And again, thank you for being a leader. We appreciate you too.
Thank you.